Well, good morning to you and the viewers at home. Coming to you live from GCIS, where various stakeholders, including government, will hold a briefing ahead of the Second Presidential National Summit against Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Of course, after the 2018 August watershed moment, the total shutdown movement, which highlighted the plight of women and children in South Africa, this second summit will be looking at the work undertaken since 2018, providing a space for accountability and feedback in eradicating the scourge against gender-based violence and femicide. To assist us further in looking at some of the strides made in this work, as well as some of the challenges they've experienced in implementing this national strategic plan in eradicating the scourge, I'm joined by the Director General of the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Advocate Joyce Maluleke. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's first talk about the main aims of this briefing.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners. The main aim of the summit is to report back to society in terms of what has been implemented after the outcry of gender-based violence from 2018 to today. The aim also is to report back to society, not just civil society is part of people who are supposed to implement, or the groups that are supposed to implement. So we're all reporting back to society to indicate that after that march, there were national task teams that have been established in order to develop the national strategic plan on gender-based violence, and the teams that were working on amending legislation as it was requested that legislation should be amended. But also one of the requests was the establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide that would facilitate the multi-sectoral approach in addressing gender-based violence. That is one thing that has taken too long because, first of all, the demand was that, or the declaration, one of the articles in the declaration was that we form the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. However, Cabinet said we must form it similar to SANEC, through the trust, but civil society said no ways, no trust. Now we had to develop legislation in order to be able to establish or to empower the National Council that would be established. Now we have finalized the bill. The bill is now tabled in Parliament. However, civil society wanted that by now the National Council should have been established, but it's one of those hiccups. However, all the three bills that they wanted to be amended have been amended. The extension of the Tutuzela care centers, the turning of your normal courts into sexual offences courts, that has been achieved. There's a lot that has been achieved. Also, the President launched the private sector support fund. There's a lot that has been achieved. However, there is still a lot that needs to be achieved because it's not what we have done. It's not about the legislation or all those. It's about us being able to deal with the case backlogs in court, being able to deal with the case backlogs of forensic evidence and all those things. We have made strides, even though there is still a lot that has to be done.
Now, of course, Advocate, you've correctly stated that there were multiple interventions that have taken place, especially on paper, to help fight the scourge. But of course, we have to acknowledge that after the 2018 summit, some of the worst and most brutal cases of gender-based violence and femicide were highlighted after that period. Cases such as Tsekofatso Pule, Uyinene Mkhwetane, Nosucelo Mtebeni, some of the most brutal, most inhumane killings of women and children we've seen post the summit. What is the challenge in addressing this, obviously a very deep-rooted problem in South Africa, as the DG working very closely with various stakeholders? Where do you think the solution lies?
There are different kinds of solutions that need to be implemented. First of all, yes, police, prosecutors, courts need to make sure that these people are arrested, and those that are not supposed to get bail don't get bail. Those that are not supposed to be paroled are not paroled. But also, I think all of us as a society, government, labor, private sector, the communities at large, we need to play a role to prevent so that it doesn't happen. For example, I always say we have children for 12 years captive at basic education from grade 1 to grade 12, and sometimes even more if they start at grade R. What is it that we are doing to ensure that we inculcate the culture of peace, the culture of respect of the next person, the culture that says, if she doesn't want me, then I will have someone else, the culture that says, I can propose and get a girl rather than rape and use force, you know, all those things. But also when we raise children, what is it that I think parenting responsibilities also come at play. I'm not abdicating the responsibility of state, but now I'm saying everyone is responsible to eradicate gender-based violence. So if we look at the state only, always violence will be happening, and then we cry that the state didn't respond appropriately, and yet we've already lost someone. So we need to prevent gender-based violence. That is what we need to do.
All right, thank you so much, DG, for your time. That was Advocate Maluleke just giving us a briefing ahead of the second ever summit, which looks at addressing the scourge by looking at the work undertaken and providing a space for accountability. The summit will be held on the 1st and 2nd of November at the Gallagher Conference Center. SABC will be bringing you that summit live over the next 2 days. Over to you in studio.